In September 1910, Otto Jerusalem won a seat on the Johnsonville Town Board, a small, ordinary piece of local democracy. 11 weeks later, on the far side of the world, his mother died in the small German statelet where she had spent her entire life, under a government that gave women like her no formal voice at all. Same family, two completely different kinds of government. What did that difference feel like, lived from the inside? Stay with us as we discover more about Mina's life. If you enjoy it, please leave a thumbs up, and if you'd like more family history content, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Herborn, the small town where Wilhelmine Veeck, Mina for short, lived, wasn't really part of Germany in any way that made administrative sense. It belonged to the Fürstenstum, or Principality of Birkenfeld, a strange leftover parcel of land handed to the Grand Duchy of Oldenburg at the Congress of Vienna in 1815. Compensation, of a sort, for territory Oldenburg had lost elsewhere. There was just one problem. Oldenburg itself sat roughly 450 kilometres away, with not so much as a shared border in between. The Duke of Oldenburg was reportedly so unimpressed by the whole arrangement that he initially refused the Grand Ducal title that came bundled with it, which, given the coach journey involved in actually governing the place, seems fair enough. 19th-century Germany was famously carved up into dozens of small, semi-sovereign statelets, each with its own laws and its own bureaucracy. Even by those standards, Birkenfeld was odd, not just small, but physically cut off from the government that ran it, administered day to day by a 5-member college of officials seated in Birkenfeld town, answerable to a duke hours away by coach, rather than to anyone nearby. For the whole of Mina's life, the territory ran on French civil law, a hangover from the Napoleonic years that the rest of Germany had long since abandoned. It wasn't replaced until 1900, which means Mina's own marriage in 1876 was conducted under a legal code that had nothing to do with the country around her. Political representation didn't exist at all until 1848, and even then only in an advisory capacity, a suggestion box essentially, not a vote. The territory's own mail was carried by Prussia, not its own government, simply because Prussia surrounded it on every side. Discontent with the arrangement did surface nearby. In March 1848, the largest demonstrations recorded anywhere in the Grand Duchy of Oldenburg broke out just down the road in Eder and Oberstein. One side loyal to Oldenburg, the other, which included many of the jewel merchants, pushing to break away from it entirely. There's no explicit record the unrest reached as far as Herborn itself, but it's a fair indication of what living under this small, remote, oddly stitched together statelet could feel like, even for people who weren't out marching. Within all that, Mina's own life takes up comparatively few lines. She was born in Herborn in 1856 and lost her father at 11. In 1876, she married Rudolf Jerusalem, under that French-derived law, rather than anything German, and over the next 26 years, the couple had 8 children, not all of whom survived. 2 died in infancy or early childhood, and a third, Emma, died at 25 of tuberculosis. Mina's own youngest, Ella, was only 7 when her mother died of that same disease in December 1910. Ella herself lived on until 1995, 85 years further than her mother ever got. The Principality's population ran at roughly 4/5 Protestant to 1/5 Catholic. An 1858 count put it at about 27,000 against 8,000. and the two faiths were administered almost as separate governments within the government. A consistorium for Protestant affairs, a commission for Catholic affairs, running side by side under the same distant college of officials. Catholics in the territory answered not to anyone local, but to the Bishop of Trier, whose authority sat almost entirely inside Prussia. Mina's own family doesn't sit neatly on either side of that line. Several generations back, on her side, there's a Lutheran pastor. Among her own children is the thread of Catholic belief. The parish records that have been referenced lean toward the Protestant side of the ledger. Her father, for instance, is recorded as confirmed the Protestant rite in 1845. But taken as a whole, the family's actual confession looks less like a settled fact and more like something genuinely fluid, which, in a small corner of Germany, answering to a duke who didn't even want the job, feels about right. There's a further layer of dispute worth mentioning. It's often assumed that Oldenburg's scattered territories, Birkenfeld included, offered Catholics something like shelter from the much harsher conditions imposed under direct Prussian rule during the 1870s Kulturkampf. Historians don't agree. At least one detailed study argues that reputation doesn't hold up, that the same tensions reached into Oldenburg's own corners too. Nobody has settled that question, and this video won't either. By the time Mina died, several of her sons had already left, one for Australia and then New Zealand, another for South America. It's tempting to read the small size and limited opportunity of a place like Herborn as the reason they went looking elsewhere, a government too small and too distracted to hold on to its own people. That may be part of it, but the principal driver was to support the family gem cutting industry in and around Herborn by sourcing gems to replace those that had been depleted locally. But it's possible that what supported the Diaspora wasn't what they were leaving behind, so much as what they found once they'd already gone. New markets, new openings, in places a small agate-cutting town in Birkenfeld could never have offered, and which kept at least one of the sons, Otto, on the other side of the world. Whatever the actual story, that's properly told elsewhere. Here, it's only the shape of the gap those departures left behind that matters. Which brings us back to where we started. Otto Jerusalem would go on to hold the kind of civic office his mother and every other woman in the Principality of Birkenfeld never could have. Not because of anything either of them did, but simply because of where and when and as whom they happened to be born. That's not really a story about Otto. It's what Mina's own life actually looked like from the inside, capable, presumably, of exactly the same judgment as her son, and given no formal say in anything at all. If your own family tree runs through somewhere as small and strange as the Principality of Birkenfeld, we'd love to hear about it. Drop it in the comments below. A quick research note. Sometimes the story of an ancestor's life is genuinely hard to find. In cases like that, it's possible to do fruitful research beyond the birth, death and marriage records, which is what we've done here with Mina, by exploring the broader social context she lived in. Remote times and places don't mirror our own, and there's real value in understanding that context alongside the individual. It can build a different sort of story about who they might have been.